welcome back to my channel. My name is Jolteon, and today we have a brand new cosplay walkthrough highlight video. Today's cosplay for the highlight is my Mew Berry cosplay. This is a highly requested video. I do keep a highlight of all my work in progress photos that I post on Instagram on my profile. You will see under my profile, you will see a bunch of those little circle highlights, and I do a bunch of my cosplays that I make fully from scratch. A lot of my bigger builds, I do keep highlights there so you can go back and view a lot of the photos and videos and me explaining kind of what's going on. But I think this type of video is important for kind of seeing the whole thing together at once versus little pieces, and I can explain each piece to you with a little bit more time than one picture on a highlight. And this is a super requested costume because it was one of my more recent builds, and a lot more people saw this one getting built. I also wore this to Otakon this year, and if you don't recognize this cosplay, it's from Tokyo Mew Mew, which is a magical girl anime. It was really big in the early 2000s. I want to say it came out around like 2002, 2004 originally, and very recently it has gotten a reboot. Now, Berry, who is this character, is actually not animated as of yet. I'm really hoping that they put her in the new reboot, but we'll see. She was a manga-only character, but she's probably my favorite. I just really like her personality, and she's very much like a fashionista. In her maid cafe outfit, she has like a light pink costume. A lot of her other stuff is like a peachy light pink color. Right now you can watch the new Tokyo Mew Mew on HiDive, which is a anime streaming site, and actually they had a booth at Otakon, and they did notice me and they did take a picture, and they actually posted me, I believe, on their official Twitter and Instagram, so like that was super cool, and it was really nice to kind of get recognized for that. This costume was a lot of work in terms of I was doing a lot of new things and building things in kind of a different way. I will say this also was one of my more recent builds where I felt like I had a little bit more experience and was able to do things a little bit cleaner. But I will say this is not one of my cleanest builds at all, which I think you'll notice kind of as we go. I'll probably point it out, and that's okay. Not every single costume has to be a competition piece. I say that as I did enter this in the Hall Costume Contest at Otakon. I did not win any awards. I was not expecting to win any awards. I built this back in the early part of 2022, and I had no intention of entering her in a competition at the time. I was getting a group together for Otakon to do all of the girls, and there was a discussion if we should enter the Hall Costume Contest, which is just a pure craftsmanship contest, and we agreed that we wanted to do it. But in the end, I was the only one that was able to bring the whole costume together, and I, at that point, had already been entered in the competition, and I thought I'll just show up and do it, whatever. And I did get to walk on stage during the masquerade, during the walk-on portion, so that was fun. But anyway, let's just dive in. Okay, so these ears are built very similarly to how I build pretty much all of my ears. So basically I start with a headband. I believe I ordered a big pack of these off of Amazon. I ended up not covering the band here. This is the color that it was, this like beige color, because my wig was going to be like a light blonde color, so I figured it wasn't really going to show, so I didn't cover it. But like, let's say this was a black headband, I would normally cover this with fabric or ribbon that matches my wig, just so that it blends in a little bit better. You'll also see that I have these clips on the edges here. So what I normally do is I take these little clippies and I shove them up under my wig into like my real hair when I go to put ears on, and that way they don't bump around or fall off or fall forward or anything like that. So the next thing I'll do when I make a pair of ears is actually put a wire skeleton in, and I know it's not going to be too visible, but there is a wire skeleton throughout here. I just wrap that around the edge and make it like a loop shape, and that helps to hold them up and keep them nice and sturdy. A lot of my ears I use felt or something easy to work with that's very inexpensive, but for this costume I specifically wanted to make them a little bit higher quality, so I did go with a faux fur. So this faux fur was laying around, I already had it, and then on the inside I did some felt, and then I also put this sparkly tulle on top just to give a little bit of something extra, and then I glued around these rhinestones. Accurate! Does it make it prettier in my opinion? Yes, so we went with it. So the next thing that we can move on to is actually the wig. So this wig is the same wig that I've used for my Believe X Stella cosplay, which is another recent one that hopefully I'll be doing one of these for as well, because I know everybody wants me to talk about the wings. But basically it's a very long blonde like wig. It was pretty straight. I did a little bit of curling on the bottom. So I just took some paper towel rolls and kind of rolled up a few pieces, sprayed it down with some got to be glued hairspray, and then just left it for a few days. And right, it's not gonna stay because I didn't use any heat, but it gave it a tiny bit of like volume. Now these wefts were like separate. They were originally the kind that have like the clips on them, but I ended up gluing them in, and then I used a couple rubber bands, you can see, to kind of keep the pigtails a little bit more structured in a way. But yeah, pretty much that's the wig. I think I cut the bangs a little bit and styled them, but the styling that I did for this and for Stella was totally different in terms of the bangs, because their bangs are different. But I always try to keep the wigs multiple use if I can. Okay, so the next thing that I had in my hair, and you'll see it in the photos, was basically these two little bows that went on here. These are made out of the same red fabric that a lot of the red pieces are made out of. There is some stuff that isn't made out of this, but I'll mention when it is. So anything that's red, assume that it's this fabric. This is a micro suede that I got from Joann's, but it doesn't fray, and that was really important for me when it came to creating the little triangles, because I didn't want to have to like hem all of them. Then I did hot fix rhinestones, so pretty much all of the rhinestones, the little ones, are all hot fix. Okay, so now we'll move on to the costume itself. So all of the beige fabric is a very, very, very inexpensive satin that I got off of Amazon again. This is where I think I am most disappointed in this build in general. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this costume. I absolutely love this costume. I loved wearing this costume. I loved everything about this costume. Issue is that I went for a very inexpensive fabric for, you know, the majority of the fabric, because again, I'm very thrifty. I like to save money where I can. The problem is that it's like so cheap that it is fraying all over the place. So it may be hard to see from this angle, but there are a lot of little tiny pieces where pretty much any stitch work has little tiny pieces coming out of it, which the rewearability is low because, of course, all day I wore this twice at Otakon. I wore it on Friday morning and also on Saturday for about 2/3 of the day, so I wore this quite a bit. And even in just a few hours of wear, I definitely noticed there was a lot of wear and tear on this. And I think had I gone with a better quality fabric, that would not have happened. So that is one thing that I will suggest. At the time when I was building this, the new animated series had not come out yet. We were literally only basing all of this off of a few teasers that we got, as well as pretty much just images from the new manga or official new images. And even Berry has only 2 color images that I could find. All of the other images that I could find for the newer outfit are black and white. And I say new outfit, and what I mean by that is that their old outfits were slightly different than their new outfits. Berry's outfit was very different in that in her original outfit, she did not have any red on her outfit, and she had the pink on her tail. She had a ribbon on her tail, but she doesn't in the new one. So it's a little odd that they added so much red to her new outfit, but they had to put a pop of color somewhere. So this neck piece goes all the way around the neck, and it's actually a piece here that's folded over, which is really accurate to what it looks like on the screen. And I get this on with snaps. I have a couple different snaps on here. So I have a snap here on this part of the bow, and then I also have another snap over here to actually take the whole bow off. And then there is another snap right here to actually get the neck piece on and off. So again, this is what the neck piece looks like. It's a piece on the inside that's folded over, and I do have all of these tiny little triangles. So I guess we could talk about the little triangles. So this is more of that micro suede, and again, I chose this so that it doesn't fray, and I didn't have to worry about fray checking all of this or burning all the edges or anything like that. I wanted to make sure that I chose a fabric that was going to be semi-inexpensive, as well as easy to work with, easy to cut, and not have to hem it, because I knew I was going to be making a lot of it. It's very soft and very comfortable to wear, because on the skirt, although I don't know if it'll show on here, I may have to move the camera later, there is a bunch of this around the bottom of the skirt as well, so that was going to be touching my legs all day, and I didn't want something really stiff and scratchy. Same thing with this being around my neck. I do not like stiff and scratchy. For all the little triangles, I pretty much just made long strips, folded them a bunch of times so I didn't have to make as many cuts, and just cut them, and then they were just these long strips. And then I put them on the inside when I was hemming the two pieces together, just put it on the inside, so when I pulled it inside out, that these would be on the outside. I think the only one that's slightly different is the ones around the top, because I ended up top stitching it on. Everything else was put on the inside and pulled through when I pulled it inside out. Now, as for the bow, I do have some interfacing on the inside of the bow to help keep it a little bit more like open and perky. So the gem is made out of hot glue. I make a lot of stuff with hot glue. I don't have a 3D printer, although there is something that's 3D printed on this costume that I'll show later. Just paint them with regular acrylic paint and put a ton of glitter on them, and it works out. If you're gonna go the glue route, you definitely need to have one of the bigger glue guns, as well as having the long sticks, and you have to have one that has multi-temp, and you have to have it on the hot setting to be able to get enough glue out at once to be able to kind of shape the shape without it getting like all lumpy and weird. And I have a silicone mat that I put down. I put my silicone mat down, and the mat itself actually has different shapes on it that I could use as a guide. I also have little molds for some of the shapes. I didn't use it on the bow, but I did use it on the gloves, which I will show shortly. Okay, so since I just mentioned the gloves, I wanted to bring them up. So the gloves themselves are spandex. This is the one thing that is slightly different than the rest of the red. And basically I made them spandex because I wanted them to be able to go on my hand nice and easy. And then I took a bit of this triangle stuff and I put it on a snap so that I can snap it on and take it off, because it has no stretch and I wouldn't be able to get it on my wrist with this being on there since it takes away the stretch of the spandex. So I thought that this was a good way to do it so that I can take this off and pull it off and it's not a problem. So just coming a little bit closer to show you, this is the heart gem that I did use a mold for, and the molds that I used were resin molds. In terms of patterns, I had made my own sweetheart pattern for my Sylveon Ruby cosplay, so I still had that. So I kind of took that to help make the shape of knowing how far I wanted each panel to be. And then I had a frozen Anna, like her coronation dress pattern, and I used that to help shape the bottom of it. I wanted to make it a point. In terms of where all of the lines were going to sit, I looked at her art, and actually in the art they have the zipper on the front, but I did not want to have my zipper on the front. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I have a visual impairment, so I'm partially blind, and it's a lot easier for me to use contrasting colors. But like doing the top stitching was really hard for me because I had to use a very similar color so that it wouldn't look weird. But when I'm putting a zipper on, I usually use a zipper that is a close color but not close enough that I can kind of tell the difference between it and my fabric that I'm working on. So I didn't want to do that in the front and have something that was a slightly different color. So the zipper is on the back. So on the outside I have the satin, then on the inside I actually have duck canvas, and then on the very inside the lining is actually flannel. I find flannel to be really comfortable, and since this was going to be a little bit tighter against my body, I wanted the inside to not be scratchy at all, and I wanted it to be very soft. I also opted for duck canvas because a lot of bodices that are more structured like this, it can help keep them structured, and I did not end up doing any boning. Personally, I don't like to wear anything with boning. It feels way too constricting on me, so I try not to do it when I can avoid it, and doing the duck canvas on the inside was able to give it just enough structure without having to use the boning, so I ended up going that route. On the side we have these little bows, and these little bows gave me so much trouble, and the reason was because the bows have little points and it's very difficult to get the little points. I ended up putting stuffing on the inside of these, so it's pretty much like one big rectangle, and then I had the stuffing on it, and then I used these parts to kind of tie it off into two sections. So these armbands gave me a lot of trouble because they had to be gathered as well as elastified, I guess. So on the inside I actually have silicone elastic because I didn't want to make them super tight, but I also didn't want them to be falling around while I was wearing them. The silicone actually helps to keep them from slipping off, so it ended up working out pretty well. These were pretty much just two long strips that I sewed to make them like rectangles and then flip them inside out. And again, the red part was on the inside when I was sewing it, like the right sides together, and then these were on the inside. So when I pulled it out, these were already on the right sides. And then I stitched on the silicone and also did like a gathering stitch thing on the machine, and that's how I was able to get them to be the shape that I wanted. I also added a little bit of stuffing on the inside as well, just to keep them a little bit puffier so that they wouldn't like sag or lose their puffiness throughout the day. Okay, so She has a tail. It has ribbons here that tie, and ideally one would tie about here and one would tie a little bit further down, but my mannequin is not the same shape as me, so this was measured for me and not for the mannequin. Another way that I had this staying put is that I had a little hole in the back of the skirt in the elastic, and that way I was able to kind of put it in there and keep it a little bit sturdier. So this is how I decided to do my tail. I have two pieces of cardboard here that are sandwiched together, and I have a wire running through here, and then I just put the wire in between the two pieces of cardboard, sandwich them together with glue. But then I have the ribbons tied in there, and again, these would tie around your waist twice, and having 2 points of contact is really helpful for keeping it from like flopping around. And I put some felt around the edge just so that when this was up against my skin, again, it wasn't uncomfortable. Okay, now the skirt. This skirt is a bubble skirt, and I want to point out that I used Ellie Ebert's tutorials for the skirt, so you can check her out. I will link the videos below that I used. I used her Ichigo build to help a lot with this. But I made a lot of changes to what she ended up doing in terms of the waistband and how she did the lining. But the general gist on how to do this was from her video. So make sure that you check that out if you want like a more in-depth tutorial on how to do this. But basically it's 2 circle skirts that I then put together to make one giant circle skirt. Then the inside skirt, there's a second skirt under here where this hem is, and it's a quarter circle skirt. And the reason why it's like that is so that it gives this big hanging baggy skirt. Then I shoved an entire petticoat in here. I used crinoline instead of like tulle because the crinoline is a lot more stiff and you don't need as much. So that went in here. And then I also used a little bit of polyfill to kind of stuff up some of this. And again, you'll see the red triangles in here, and this was put in again with the hemming to begin with, so that's why that's here. I ended up doing an elastic waistband. I believe Ellie does hers a little bit different, but I went with an elastic waistband because that's just the easiest for me instead of a zipper. Okay, and then so a very important piece of this cosplay is her prop. I 3D printed this, but I got the 3D print file off of Etsy, so I will put the link in the description below. But I used my local library's 3D printer. I had to bring the file to them, and then I adjusted at the library itself, and I changed the sizing a little bit because I needed it to fit the rod. So the 3D file is only for the top and the bottom piece. The rod you have to make yourself. This is just a Smensel container. Like if you remember those smelly pencils, I've used these a lot for different rods. I have a couple different like wands and rods and stuff that I've used these for. So I just made sure that it was going to be the same like millimeter so that I could put these on because they had like holes on them for the rod to go into. So they fit pretty well. I put a little bit of glue and then just like popped them on, and they stay on pretty well. So then I painted everything separately in base colors to match, and then I did a couple different textures as well, especially on the bunnies, just so that kind of as it moves it has tons of different light hitting it and it's sparkling at every single movement. This one is also another hot glue one that I made, and then I just added the ribbon here. Yeah, so that is my berry build. If you have any specific questions, you can leave them in the comments and I'll definitely try to answer them. Again, I have a whole highlight on my profile that may help you in terms of looking at every little piece that I go through or watching the process again. I hope this is helpful for anyone who's looking to make this particular costume or any of the new Mew Mew outfits. This is a dream project. I'm so glad I got to do it, and I hope that it's helpful for you guys. So thank you.